Well, welcome everybody to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. We are on the Going Solo Veterans Corner, and I have our wonderful host here, Paul Holbert. He is a literary vet, and we are so proud to have him on here with us. So, how you doing, Paul?
Oh, pretty good, actually. I'm so glad to be able to take this evening to talk with you. And I know in our first session of the Veterans Perspective, we had a pretty good conversation and covered a lot of topics. So I'm glad that we could get you back on so we could continue our discussion.
Well, it is great being on. And those of you that don't know me, I am Cece Shatz. I am the Doyenne. I'm called the Doyenne of relationship building. I'm a divorce, dating, and life coach. I'm the founder of our Going Solo network here. And so it's just such an honor to be here with you tonight. And, talking about the veterans and helping the veterans get through some difficulty times, but also enlightenment of your service and maybe even some of the joyous things that you experience, your travels and things like that. So there's I know it's up and down, being a veteran or being, in the service, because there's some joyous times and then there's some very difficult times. So it is an honor.
Well, I appreciate it, and I appreciate you taking the time to have the discussion with me. And as we get started, I just wanted to kind of remind our audience in the first part of our discussion, we talked a little bit about why people serve and all the various reasons why, we have veterans who, people who join the military, and whether they make it a career or just serve an enlistment or two, everybody has their own different reasons. And, we went on to talk and share a little bit about some of the training and some of the experiences we endure as we do that. And I think we got a couple of laughs out of a few of them. But then I think we kind of moved into the more serious part of our conversation when I started sharing with you about the evolution of leadership and what the military teaches you. And of course, you and I have had this conversation before, and you're pretty familiar as well, coming from a family with veterans, with your father and your son. So, I'm sure you're aware of a lot of this, but, the military does something to you that you don't, it's such a unique career. And I say that not in a boastful way, but in a way that, quite frankly, it is. It's so different from just about anything else you would ever do. And one of the things that the military does to you is they instill in you responsibility, not only for yourself, but for the others around you. So you spend your entire career feeling like you are responsible for everything. And quite frankly, as you go up in rank, it does seem like you are, regardless. So you're expected to be the one who handles everything, the one who solves every problem, the one who tackles every issue. I think for a lot of veterans, myself included, we get a little older through all of our experiences, things start to come back, and you get to the point where certain things in your career affect you. And, but you're always expected to be that strong person.
It's pretty broad shoulders, right? You all have extremely broad shoulders to carry that load. Yeah.
Yeah. It's as you get into, you go up in age, they say you should mellow with age. The military, for a lot of us, tends to take that away. And, I don't mind sharing with you, I was diagnosed with PTSD about 4.5 years ago. It took so long before it finally took over my life to where I had to get help. And my wife encouraged me heavily to get help. She supported me every step of the way. And I have to tell you, I had another one of those days today, as a matter of fact, to where even at this point, I'm 62 years old. I left the military 20 years ago, but it took it all those years before it came out. And I just saying that, I say that because I want to share with the other veterans out there and with our audience so they can understand. It's an experience where you have to realize that you need to get help. You have to realize that you're not in the military any longer. You can't do it all by yourself. You don't have to carry the burden or the load by yourself like you were expected to before. And it really took my wife figuratively just beating that into me before I would agree and realize that, yeah, you know what? You need help. And even though I had another one of those days today, and she's always so good when I have those experiences, they're much better than they used to be. They're fewer and farther between than they used to be. And that's because I went to get help. And I'm still getting help every month from a clinical psychologist that the military, paired me up with. And I'm still under her discussion and care every month. But, I just want to reiterate, through all of our military experiences and all the military training and things that we do, for those of you that are out there, just a reminder, you don't have to do it alone. Don't do it alone. The help is out there, whether it's the DAV, the VA, and Cece, I think you had some experiences with your father as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's extremely common, for our service men and women to experience things. And in today's world, what we're experiencing now, even in our, in our homeland, and with the COVID and all of the various different things that's happening around us, I think it triggers some of those feelings. Because again, like you were saying, a lot of our veterans today, a lot of our soldiers, they want to fix whatever the problem is. That's what they're trained to do. Give me a problem and I will fix it for you. And not everything can be fixed. And so it causes a lot of anxiety, which triggers a lot of extra things that are happening within. So someone's individual's mental health is vital. And it's not something that we should take lightly, nor to be embarrassed about, So I know that any VA that's close to wherever you might live, if you're experiencing anything, just all you have to do is pick up the phone and give them a call and let them know that you're having trouble, and they'll point you in the right direction of who you need to be, seeing, or go physically in there and talk to someone. And they will help you, but we have to, we have to put our voice forward and move forward and let people know that we need that help. And so, Paul, I commend you for doing that, for stepping up and saying, hey, I need a little help with this to be able to get through. So absolutely.
Yeah, like I said, it was a struggle. And my poor wife, it was like pulling teeth, but she finally got me to admit it. That I couldn't do it by myself, and I can't. So I'm so thankful for the help that I get, not only from her every day, but from the folks that the Army has paired me up with to talk with and help me. So, but I want to, and I'm glad we could talk about that. But I kind of want to move on to a lighter note now, if we can. And going through the military experience, one of the things that I think makes it unique for veterans, and not that there are some civilian jobs where you would do this, but what we in the military used to call the fun, travel, and adventure. And we in the military, you're normally exposed to so many different people, so many different cultures, and to where that just becomes a norm for you. You get orders to travel all over the world. I can tell you some experiences where when I was in the 101st Airborne at Fort Campbell, it wasn't exactly one of the fun travel and adventure, but you get a call at 4 o'clock in the morning. You showed up in my unit with all my bags. We got everything ready and stripped it down and packed it to put it on aircraft. Within about 4 hours, we were taken off from the airfield, and all of that just to fly around for a few hours and come back and unload everything. So, that's, I guess you could say, is part of the adventure piece, because I don't consider it travel or fun. But yeah, I mean, when you think about it, being in the military, you go so many different places and you see so many different people that I think it's really good for the development of the veterans themselves, as we experience it, because you get to experience so many different cultures.
Mm-hmm. And you get a true appreciation for all that we have here, because some places I know you guys go to isn't the best, some of it's third world and whatever, but it really gives us an appreciation. And there's so many people here today that just don't realize how other people live. They don't get it. And by traveling to these other places and experiencing the lives of other people and how they can touch you like you've experienced, it truly changes your world. I mean, it truly gives you that knowing that the United States and what you are fighting for, what you represent is pretty damn awesome. Yeah.
Well, one of the things they teach us is that you're expected to be what they used to call a representative or an ambassador of the United States. And, I've been to a lot of different countries during my career. And, I'll share something with you that happened to me. I did 3 tours in Korea during my 21 years in the Army. And when I went back, of course, I had become an NCO sergeant and staff sergeant, and we had the dubious honor of pulling what they called courtesy patrol out in the big Korean village that was outside our post. And of course, those Korean villages out there are full of restaurants, bars, nightclubs, all of those things, because there's a large, American contingent of service members around. And so our job in courtesy patrol was to try to keep our soldiers out of trouble. And, the interesting thing is I had just pulled courtesy patrol the night before, and it was pretty quiet. So the next evening, I was actually able to go out and sit down in a restaurant and have something to eat. And I was there with 2 other sergeants, and this group of 4 soldiers came in the restaurant. Of course, they had been drinking, were carrying on, loud, obnoxious, rude to the lady that was trying to wait on their table. And even though, I wasn't in uniform, I wasn't on duty, finally I had to get up and I had to say something. And, quite frankly, I went over to their table. I introduced myself. I told them who I was, and I told them that they needed to pleasantly get up, leave the restaurant, and not come back. And Of course, I almost got an argument from them, and in the military structure, you really don't put up with that, as you as you're well aware.
Right.
And I basically kind of helped them get out of the restaurant, but they were, they teach us we're a representative of our country. And just like you're saying, you experience all those cultures. We come there, we see how other people live, and you're not there to downgrade anyone else, or you're not better than anyone else. You're in their culture, you conduct yourself accordingly. So, as part of that travel around the world, I think that's one thing that it makes you a little sensitive to, is to remember you have a responsibility to represent the country as you travel around.
Yeah. I totally get that. I mean, I know that from my son, you know, felt the same way. And even I, when I traveled, I've been to Africa, I've been, to
Mhm.
Ireland, Scotland, and Europe, and a lot of other places. And I always felt that, I'm an American, and that people, as soon as I open my mouth, they can tell, and they would say, "Oh, you're an American." And, but I always felt very proud that I was an American. And I always felt like that I needed to, to do our country well. I don't want them to
Yeah.
think, okay, here's some flaky American, So I always tried to do the best that I can. And I know that our soldiers do the same thing. They hold their heads up very high and very proud, and they really try to be kind and treat the locals very, very well. And you can see that on various videos and things like that
Yeah.
that you see. So yeah, I totally get that.
Well, it's not just that portion, but like you were saying earlier, um, as a veteran, we get an opportunity to travel to so many different places, see so many different cultures. And, sometimes you see other cultures at their worst. And, I can just tell you, traveling through Bosnia and Kosovo, when they were in civil war, to be traveling through an area and then to have young children come running out to your Humvee. And one day we were on a convoy, and we were actually heading to the Russian sector to link up with at a Russian camp. And we had a group of children come running out with a wooden box. And of course, the countryside was just decimated. Every town or village you went to was half destroyed. So these people were out there living in places that were virtually useless. But these kids ran out to the Humvee. We pulled over. They had been told that if they found any weapons or ammunition or anything like that, that if they turned them over to us, we would give them food and water. And it was amazing to see these group of kids. There were about 5 or 6 of them. They walked up to my Humvee, and as I got out, they opened this box, and I was taken aback because inside this box were 3 explosive heads to an RPG.
Wow.
And I mean, it's a live explosive.
Mm-hmm.
You got to treat it carefully. And these kids were running around with it like it was nothing. So, as we had said, we pulled out some MREs and some bottles of water. We gave it to the kids. One of my drivers had some candy, and we gave the kids candy. And we had to leave a Humvee back until some of the engineers could come and pick up the box of munitions that
Mm-hmm.
they had brought up. But just to see those other countries, when you see places when they're not at their best. And that's when they really expect you to be at your best. And I think those experiences really go so far in the development of us as not only soldiers, but as we become veterans later on and get a little older, as people.
Right.
And I really think that that makes a difference in a lot of us in our perspective, once we get a little older.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I can definitely see that.
Yeah, it's just, to have that ability to travel and experience so many different things.
Mm-hmm.
And, the 11 countries that I traveled to while I was on active duty in the 21 years. And it's so amazing when I sit back and look at that and I say, yeah, I traveled to 11 different countries, even though some of them were short deployments.
Mm-hmm.
I spent, my goodness, I spent 9 of my 21 years in Europe alone.
Wow.
And I still had enough time to go to all those other places in the other 11 years. So, you feel like a wandering nomad as part of the military circle.
Yeah. I was talking to Davida, and she had mentioned like just like I don't know, it was a short period of time that she moved like 9 times.
Yeah.
And some of them were great places, wonderful places. So wonderful experiences. So yeah. So it's sometimes it's a blessing, but then sometimes it's a curse, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Cece, I think it's time for our short break.
I know it went by very
I
quickly.
know. And then when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about the veterans commitment.
Okay, we'll do that. Yeah, I mean, you've had some fabulous shows on and all of that. So yeah, I'm excited to hear what you're going to say. So we'll be right back, everyone. So hang tight, and we're looking forward to sharing this opportunity here with you. Well, we're back. It went by very quickly, didn't it? Paul, I wondered if we could just take a moment and thank our wonderful sponsors that we have here for the show. Could we do that?
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, you just play the ads, but these 2 sponsors have been great. They've sponsored my show almost since the inception, a couple of years now. And I mean, they're 2 great businesses, Nationwide IT Services. Their owner himself is a retired Army veteran, and he now has a successful business, CK Park and his crew. They provide professional management, IT, and training services for businesses all over the country and for a lot of federal government agencies. So they're a very experienced organization, very professional organization, and they're one of those people that is community centric because they get involved in the community. They do all kinds of donation programs. So very, very proud to have them as our sponsor. Our other sponsor, Quest Jewelers, as you know, they've been sponsoring us for the same amount of time. So Pete and Juan Tain are brothers. They own Quest Jewelers, and they are two wonderful guys to talk to. I have to tell you, I have spent a pretty nickel at Pete's store. He's
well,
no,
I like his wife.
yeah, he is a great guy. He and his brother both, they produce such quality jewelry, and he sells some of the best line of jewelry, but not just sells jewelry, but custom makes some of the most beautiful pieces. So, we're proud to have them as our sponsor as well. And, we want to thank both of them for their continued sponsorship of our show.
Yeah, it's been so they've been with us from the very beginning and support all the veterans, which is really a wonderful thing. So we've listed their information there. Please let them know that you've heard them on here on the show. We'd appreciate it. That would be awesome. So thanks, Paul, for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I'm always happy to talk about our sponsors because they do such good things for us. Mm-hmm. Before we went to the break, Cece, I mentioned, the veterans' commitment. Mm-hmm. And, we were talking before the break of how, so many of the things that we learn that they instill in us with the military training, our military lifestyle, our experiences, kind of follows you, even after you leave the service. And even some of the guests I've had on my show have talked about that. Mm-hmm. And I had the pleasure of talking with a couple of more this week. And it's kind of interesting that my wife and I were out on Fort Belvoir just about 2 weeks ago, and ran into a sergeant there as we were sitting in one of the offices, and she was excited because she had come in to sign her DD-214. She was getting ready to retire.
Oh, wow.
And she was so excited. So, I introduced myself, talked to her. I told her about the show. And so she's going to be a guest on the show coming up.
Awesome.
But I had a chance to talk to her today. And, you carry that mindset, as I was talking about with you. Now, she's got, I don't want to spill the beans, but she's got an excellent plan in her retirement and what she's going to do. But she was also telling me today how she could not wait, because she's starting her own business, how she could not wait to use her business to help the community. So it's that mindset, I think. The commitment that, we when we joined the military, and you're well aware from your dad and your son, there's an oath of enlistment. There's an oath that you take when you put that uniform on. And I dare say that the majority of veterans, even after they retire, they still take that oath very, very seriously. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying, to the point where, you've got some 70-year-old veteran who's ready to put a rucksack on and a pair of boots and head to the battlefield again. But I'm talking about in spirit, mm-hmm. in their mind, in their spirit, in their devotion to the country, their respect for the flag, and the respect for what they served for, and for some of them, what they fought for. And then, of course, for those that don't get a chance for that life, the ones what they died for.
Yeah.
You carry that commitment even after your military life. And for me, I think it's important to remember that commitment, as we as veterans, and for the veterans out there in the audience, I'm sure you can relate to what I'm talking about. We still have a love of the nation. We still have a love of our principles, the flag. And even though we may disagree with other people, what they say or do, part of what we defended was their right to do that. Mm-hmm. So, we have to keep that in mind. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean we completely turn our heads when other people want to either damage or destroy the nation. So, that freedom of expression that we have, that we've defended, it's there. We defended that. But by the same token, we still have a country that I think we're still responsible for. And that's why I'm so happy to see a lot of the veterans that I talk to. They still have that commitment, that devotion to what they served for. And when I say that, I'm talking about in an apolitical way.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter your politics. You took the oath. This is your country. You serve the country. It should be the country you love. No matter what your politics are, you still have that oath inside you. At least most veterans do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something, that you remember. And like I said, you may not agree with what everyone says or does, but part of what you defended was their right to express themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And you just learn to look at that and say, we have all that because of all those people who came before,
Right.
all those people that I served with, and those people who will come after us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just something to keep in mind about that veterans' commitment to the country. Mm-hmm. And I think it's still there. I think it's proud. I think the veterans are still proud.
Yeah, I agree. I remember going into the VA, taking my dad in there for medical treatments and things. And a veteran, or someone that's in the service, they have this air about them. I can't really quite describe it, but they have this, you can tell generally, even if you're not on the campus of the VA, that generally, if someone's been in the service, they have this particular way about them, but it's almost an air of protection. You know what I mean? I don't know if I can quite describe it exactly, but that if you're in the presence of a veteran or someone that's in the service, there's just something about them that you might not be able to put your finger on it, but it's definitely something unique. There is a unique air about them. And so, yeah, I totally understand what you're saying.
Well, that kind of, it's interesting you say that. That kind of brings me into the next topic I was going to talk about with you, and it's the one I like to call "Thank you for your service." As I said, I retired from the Army 20 years ago. The evolution of the appreciation for our military has changed so much over the years. I've watched so many films, documentaries. I mean, I'm a history buff, but I love military history. And I think, when our soldiers came home from World War II, they were treated pretty well. The government had a lot of programs set up specifically for veterans. But then, things changed. And when Vietnam hit, things were rough for our veterans, the ones returning, the ones who were drafted, even those who volunteered. I served with a sergeant major at Fort Benning. He voluntarily served 3 tours in Vietnam. He was wounded on every tour. So he had 3 Purple Hearts. And I asked him, I said, Sergeant Major, you must have been a glutton for punishment. And but he just felt that was his duty. And, he finally told me, when I was talking with him, he said, yeah, my wife finally told me if I volunteered to go back, that was it. She was not going to be here after I left, which I can understand. But, to have that generation of our veterans treated the way they were when they came back, was really sad to see. But then, we started this evolution, and I started remembering it was just a few years after I retired, about 5 years after I retired, when this whole thing of people thanking you for your service started. And, quite honestly, I wasn't sure how to take it. I was actually embarrassed for a while because you don't go into the military for thanks. You don't go into it for attention. Now, as a retired veteran, I've always got one of my Army hats on, or my retired Army hats, because I got so used to wearing hats for 21 years in the military, it's become a habit afterwards. So, I like to wear my military hats.
And you have hair.
Yes,
So
and I have hair. You're right. I'm not covering a bald head, am I?
I know.
I'm like my oldest son, who's spent an enlistment in the Army, who's got less hair than I do, I have to say. You know,
You don't
um,
have to wear a hat.
but so when that started happening, at first I wasn't sure how to take it. But now when people come up to me and do that, I quite simply I look at them, I say, well, thank you. Because you do appreciate that. You appreciate it not necessarily as much for yourself, but for those people who were before you that weren't treated as well.
Right.
It makes you happy to see how far our society has come to where we appreciate the sacrifices of our military folks, especially when you're talking about as an all volunteer force.
Mm-hmm.
So, when we see that, we try to bring our experiences to society, our stories to society, share them with the public and share our perspectives. So when you get that, you appreciate it, but you're so happy to see it, even though there are veterans who serve that didn't ever get to. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, you're always looking for a way. My wife and I talked about, when I got ready to retire again, finding a way that, we could give back, to the veteran community. And that's why actually I was so happy to talk with you about doing this show, because I get a lot of comments from veterans, not only those that have been on the show, but some others who have seen it and said, it's really great to see that show and see what you're trying to do, giving veterans a voice to share their experiences and their stories. And I think, we continue that perspective and that service in some way. And so many veterans that I know and talk to, all are trying to give back. Mm-hmm. Once they're out of the service and they're retired, and or they're working another career after the military. All of them, or at least the majority of them, are trying to get back in some way. And I think that service, that sense of service, is instilled into you. Doesn't make you any better than anyone else, but I think it just gives you a little more sense of commitment to what you want to do, and especially to some of the other people around you.
Yeah, definitely. I when I was young, I remember I asked my father, why are we always away from the US and going to all these other countries and fighting? Mm-hmm. Why do we even bother doing that? And his answer was, because we don't want it here.
Yeah.
We want to keep it off of U.S. soil. And so, we just had 9/11. I mean, and so that is a clear reminder of how much the service we need, how much we need the men and women that have served in the various different platforms of the service, military and Navy and Air Force and all of those, how vital it is that we have them to keep us safe here and we've got the United States is huge, Yeah. And so to keep our borders safe for us so that we don't have to experience what we had to experience in 9/11. And so, I think that if anyone feels that, a service, whatever war it was, maybe it wasn't necessary, all they have to do is go back and look at those pictures of 9/11. And It's very clear that each and every woman and man that has served in the service was so desperately needed.
Well, I have to tell you, when I first joined the military, I was sitting there thinking, how lucky I would be if I could get through. If I once I decided to stay is making my first career, how lucky I would be if I could get through my first career and never have to deploy to combat. And of course, I wasn't that lucky. And I was in several places where I was exposed to that. But you look back on it, and I think from those experiences, you get a sense of commitment to what you try to do as best you can, and you get a commitment to the country. And you're right. I think having experienced some of that firsthand, I just could not imagine after seeing what happened on 9/11. Could you imagine our country actually being attacked here and what the population would do and how things would be?
Yeah. I mean, Pearl Harbor. I mean, there has been attacks on the
Yeah.
United States, and thank God, very few, but they have been significant. And, also the terror of the people, so you look in these other countries and, and what those people are going through who are innocent people, and war is war, and that's kind of the way it is. But we look at our streets in New York of people running from the towers, running in terror, running, not knowing what to do. And that people in other countries were experiencing the same
Yeah.
terror. And so our eyes are wide open. And I think we have to be very, very grateful for our servicemen and women that have protected our homeland and that continue to protect us, and are a wonderful representative of the United States.
Well, I want to thank you again too for the opportunity to do this show on the network, because like I said, this is something I enjoy doing. It's my way to keep veterans connected, keep myself connected with them, and give them a voice to share their experiences and opportunities. So, before we close out, I just wanted to let you know I do appreciate the platform here on the Going Solo Media Network and being able to host the show like I do.
Oh, you do such a good job, and your guests are just awesome. I mean, each and every week that you're a bi-weekly show, but each and every time you come on, I'm always looking forward to which guests you're going to have and what they're going to share, and their experiences, and and I have so many favorites that of course my son was on, so he is one of my favorites.
That was a good conversation too.
He's fun. He's a fun guy.
Yeah.
But some of the, like, what was his name? Was it Nick, the older gentleman, that he wrote a poem to his wife?
Oh, Pete.
Oh, Pete.
Oh, Pete Anastasi, yes. The 99-year-old World War II veteran.
Oh, he pulled my heart.
75 years to his wife, yes.
Oh, what a delightful man.
Yes.
What a character he is. So, I mean, you've just really had some pretty awesome individuals that have shared and not only shared what their experiences were within the service, but also how it changed them, how their life shifted, and what they're doing after, which is very enlightening and very empowering, I think, to those out there. So, thank you so much for all that you do. And before we close out, I know we're going to have to hurry and kind of do it, but I was wondering if you could share some of your, because I know you're an author and you've written a book. Can you share that? Because you don't do that very often, so I want to make you do that now.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I know there's a link on the Going Solo webpage for my show, Literary Vet, but I write fiction. I've got several books of fiction out. One is an adventure fiction set in Australia. The other one is a little sensitive in that I started writing it before all this craziness began, and it's called Term Limits. And no, it's not about the argument about, limiting Congress's time. It's a crime fiction, and I think people who enjoy reading that type of stuff would find it very interesting. So yeah, and I enjoy it. I haven't had as much time to do it lately because between the show and working and some other things, been tied up. But, I've always enjoyed writing. So the information, is there on my.
That's right. They're
website.
the literary vet. .net
Yeah,
is your website. So
yeah.
your books will be. How many books have you written?
I've actually written 3.
Wow.
But 2 of them are more prevalent. The other one was a work of, how can I say, it was called The Dunce Cap, Why America Deserves the Stool in the Corner. And it was actually a very parodic look at American society. My wife keeps telling me I need to do a new one of those. Heaven knows there's a lot of material out there now for it. But I don't know. I may get around to it. But before we go, I do want to take just a moment to mention to everyone the Museum of the United States Army, located up here right outside Fort Belvoir, Virginia. I got to just very quickly, I've got to tell you folks, I finally had a chance to go. My wife took me in, and actually it was for my birthday, and it was, the place is wonderful. And you're talking about all those veterans. The staff there is made up of volunteer veterans, retirees.
Nice.
And they will share their history they know of, their everything. And there are a lot of ways to donate. They don't charge for you to go in, but you can donate. So it's really wonderful. Get a chance, take a look at the website there on the screen, visit the website, see some of their programs, their opportunities to donate. It's a beautiful museum.
Now, where is it located again? It's
located right here outside Fort Belvoir, Virginia.
Okay.
In Northern Virginia.
Yeah.
Very beautiful. So, but I appreciate you having the discussion with me tonight, Cece.
Oh, it's so nice. It's an honor to be here, and I'm so pleased. I mean, I'm usually on the back end, so it's kind of nice being here with you and sharing the front of the show. So it's very cool. Thank you.
All right. Well, I will be talking with you very soon, I'm sure.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Bye, everyone. We'll see you next time.